Hi there, I'm Paul Muller, host of the AI Forecast, Data and AI in the Cloud Era, a weekly podcast sponsored by Cloudera that explores the past, present and future of data and AI in the enterprise. In our last episode, we looked at how enterprises are facing a potential data drought when it comes to precision data and AI. If you've missed it, be sure to check it out. Now for this week's episode, which we also recorded at Cloudera Evolve 24 in New York City.
Well, when you think about enterprise, and particularly when you think about data and big data, I think a lot of us, certainly I, tend to think of it as being associated with big companies, the biggest companies. And certainly when you read the press, a lot of what you read is about the biggest consumers and users of data. But what about big data for small business? Is it an oxymoron? Does it make sense? Well, to find out, we're going to talk to Ryan Garnett, who's the Senior Manager of Business Solutions at the Halifax International Airport Authority. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great having you here. You've just gotten out of delivering a talk at Cloudera Evolve, so I'm kind of keen to hear what you were talking about. I'm definitely keen to find out more about what your experience has been in terms of applying big data principles to a smaller business. But before we do all of that, we do a little thing we call the fast forward, just to warm up. Are you ready to limber up intellectually?
Absolutely.
Vocally?
I'll try my best.
Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. First question for you. I ask all of my friends when I meet them for the first time, what would people who know you best say is your superpower?
Funny question. I love it. I'm going to go back to something that my friend said that was my superpower, and I got offended, and then I kind of wised up to it. He called me a chameleon.
Yeah, okay, I can see why that might be a little bit
right? It's like,
provocative.
But really it's the adaptability. So I think my superpower is I look for the end rather than how to do it. So it allows me to kind of go where it needs to do because I kind of want to win. I want to get to the outcome and not so fixated on how we get there.
I love it. Next question. So we hear a lot about AI and all of these amazing technologies at the moment, but as you think through history, what technology do you think has had the most impact?
Human creativity.
Calling it a technology?
It's the brain. What's more complex than that?
Okay, you've literally blown my mind, which is kind of self-referential. I'll take it. I'm not even going to go anywhere with that. That's brilliant. On to the topic of AI, though. Every day we seem to be able to do new and almost magical things with AI in terms of automating tasks that you would have thought previously required a person. Imagine for a bit, what process could technology automate for you that would improve your quality of life or just make you happy or take some crap off your plate you'd rather not have?
Never have to open an email again. I could just love it. My wife and I's stuff is just synced, right? And I just didn't have to go into email and calendars. Love it.
You know what? I think there might be a company in that. Conversely, there's a few things where I think people will kind of get the ick if there's not a human in the middle. What's one where you'd always like to see a human in the loop?
Hiring. I think when it comes down to making human decisions about people, I think it's just jobs are what we tie our association to so much in our life, and I don't think it should be fully AI. I think there should be at least a person with their finger on the pulse.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. Last but not least, at least in my experience as an executive, subconsciously I didn't realise that every time I'm working with data, I'm coming at it with a filter, and not even a filter, just a methodology that I apply. Yeah. And I realised it helped me be successful in what I am, and I'm different to other folks in that regard. Just curious, what tips, tricks, traps have you learnt that have helped you be a better executive when it comes to data?
Don't focus on cool. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it really is cool, right? But that's not what's going to solve the problem. Those core principles, the foundation stuff, those pieces are what's going to get you there. And when it boils down to it, people want trust, and cool doesn't really give you that trust. So if you focus on the things like the value, the real simple questions, so many things that we do in the run of a day is based on just an average or a small percentage of increase. It's not about bringing in earth-shattering disruptive technology. I love that stuff, I really do, but it's not what moves the ball down the field every time.
Yeah, and it's really easy to be seduced, I guess, by all the technology, isn't it?
Yeah, that hype.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I'm guilty of it as anyone because I love the tech, right? It's great. All right, well, look, let's pivot hard
across
to you and the business, and we'll talk about big data and small businesses. But before we do that, maybe a little bit about your background,
Yeah.
how you came to be where you are, and then we'll talk a bit about the business as well.
So from a career, I shouldn't be sitting here with you. Like, I wanted to be Yogi the Bear, picnic baskets, wanted to be park warden, hiking boots, canoe, and stuff like that. So I went to school for outdoor recreation, parks and tourism.
So that was actually your
That's
thing?
literally what I went to school for.
Okay, so how did you wind up where you did?
Everyone in Canada, who was in that works for Parks Canada. No one leaves it. So I couldn't get a job, so I had to pivot. And the other thing that I really loved was maps. So I'd read atlases, and you go to the gas station, you see the pin map on the wall and things like that. I'd just stare at it. And a person said, "Have you ever heard of this thing called GIS?" I'm like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." So I took some courses in it, and I went to school. GIS is mapping.
Yeah.
And I specialized in satellite images. So the OG big data, the machine
Yeah.
learning
I was gonna
before
say, how long
all
ago was
this
this?
stuff. Yeah.
How long
so
ago?
this was, when was that? 2003.
Yeah, okay, so it was literally just at the time when it was starting to become normal
Yeah,
to have
that's
GIS data, and it was still, as you say, it was
Very
big
early,
data.
yeah.
Big data for those days.
So my first job was building flight simulators for the military. So I was building continent-wide 3D simulations. Today we call them digital twins.
Yeah.
So I started in that space, and I always wanted to travel. I wanted someone to pay my way, right, and live internationally. So I traveled a lot. I moved around. I lived in Newfoundland doing stuff for not the military, but for forestry.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved to the United States and worked for a company there, and we did a lot of stuff. And I got a chance to live in India, and then Qatar and Abu Dhabi and all these different places. And then I went back to grad school. I was like, this is it. I'm going to take what I learned. I'm going to put it in a park setting. And how can parks kind of say no? And I did my thesis literally for the park around my university, and they didn't come calling.
How can they say no? Well, it turns out they
easy,
can.
very easily. So that's when I was like, okay, parks will be a passion. Like, that's something that will
Yeah.
just be my lifestyle, and
Yeah.
I'll do that. And I just kept going into data, and I wanted to move away from it after a while. I was really feeling pigeonholed and worried that I was only going to be seen as a geographic person or a 3D person.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to stay away from geography. And I kind of went through different jobs, worked for the city of Toronto, started up data science for them, and then moved back to Halifax. That's where I'm from, and went back to start, raise our kid instead of living in an apartment. And just moved into the airport and went through healthcare, health insurance, and bringing it in and doing all these things of different scales to try to like expand my thought pattern. And here we are at the airport, and geography is a big thing in the airport, right? Like, geography is a big piece. So it really rounded me out and gave me these different perspectives. And, I think we think of engineers and computer scientists all the time, but yeah, they build great algorithms, but applying the business logic and the domain piece, that's where there's a bit of outcome. So it's like applying that tech with different thoughts, and I love to build products.
That's great.
So
So let's talk a bit about the airport and its relationship to data, and then I suppose how it's informed your point of view on big data for smaller businesses, and how other organisations of your size who may be looking at it going, this stuff's not for me, or it doesn't apply, can get value from it.
Absolutely, yeah. So airports are just a small city, right? Imagine anything that happens in a city. Well, it happens in an airport. Like, we have fire trucks. We have a fire group. We have mechanics. We have people have to have hospital visits, right? An airplane needs to land for a heart attack. Like all these different pieces. And we've got roads. We have to clear snow. Like all that. Well, that's all data points. Everything is data, right? And it's all applications that are being stored. And typically when we think of an airport, it's like moving people. But now we've come into like, how can we do that better? Like, how can we not invest into building an airport, maybe leverage our infrastructure and wring out the last little drop? So we've been collecting data and doing data since the first database that's ever been installed, right? You think of when you scan your boarding pass or you log in, like that's a data point. But people weren't taking advantage of it. So it's just sitting there. COVID happened. Kind of hurt the aviation industry a little bit,
Slowed
right?
things down a bit, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. And I wasn't there at that point. So what I heard is we were turning off air conditioners to save money. Like turning off lights, like it was devastating. It was a ghost town. It was really hard. So when you have that, it's like, when are we coming out? And the impacts are, it hurts your credit rating. It hurts your ability to grow and build and all these pieces. So COVID created data analytics at our airport. And we needed to know that so we could report up. I wasn't there again, but like we need to report up to our executive team and the board, like how are we doing? Are we out of it? Are we at a different spot? So not having the right people, they outsourced it. And that's a bad thing. One thing I heard, and I love it, is like, don't outsource accountability. And to me, data is your accountability, because that's the way you keep yourself in check and you make those decisions. So you do what you have to do, and I commend them for it. And they built these products, and they used these different pieces, and it never worked.
And when you say products, give me an example of the sort of product that
One dashboard.
Oh, really?
That's it.
Yeah.
That was their one product. And it was done in like a POC kind of concept. And I don't know about you, but POCs, proof of concept, turn into production overnight. As soon as it's done, it's like, boom, right there.
Always, yeah, exactly right.
Right? So none of that foundation, the checking, the branding wasn't put into it. So anytime there was an issue, which happens, life happens, we have to go back to your consultant. Great business model for them, but really bad for us. And it can take a lot of time, and it's costly. And the software that they built it on, or the applications, they weren't standard. So when I come in, like, I've never heard of this, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So how do I attract talent? How do I bring this in? How do I keep it going? So it's time to get rid of it. I was like, don't pay the bill. We're done. And we're going to rebuild from scratch, because we were going to take this as an opportunity to build it right.
So when you say things like that, I think one of the reasons, and this is a personal perspective, is that smaller businesses tend to do things like outsource and whatnot, is because they're like, well, it might be that our team in technology and IT is all of it might sometimes be one person, and that might even be their part-time job, and certainly don't have time to build things and or maintain them. So I won't say outsourcing is the easy option, it's the necessary option in many cases. So the idea of taking it in-house and building it must have been a pretty big call.
It really was, and I gotta really commend the leadership team, and like, for real, like they gave the opportunity, and that was the piece. It's like, I like to build. I'm gonna build this, and we're gonna do it right. Like, you've seen what has happened, but you haven't seen the alternative. So let's try it.
How long ago was this?
It was a year ago.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So this is relatively
Yeah.
recent.
So April 17th was my first day.
Great.
Of 2023.
And tell me about what you were trying to build or replace or accomplish.
First, I went to build a culture.
Okay.
That was the first thing I wanted to do. And I know you don't build a culture and then, like, literally, but data needs to be an asset and not a commodity. And we need to think of it differently as something that we leverage and value. So people weren't valuing it. And I'm reminded of a previous place, and I worked in finance, and we reported to the CFO. It was my first day or first week or something like that. And our CFO was getting to know him. He's like, Ryan, I don't value data. I'm like, wow. So I just joined this organization to do data, and you don't value it. So instead of like trying to sell him on it, I just kind of paused, and he's like, the reason why I don't is I could ask 5 different people, and he's like, I have the same question and get 5 different answers.
If not 6, yeah.
Yeah, right? So I was like, okay, fair. So that always stuck with me. And building that culture is around trust. So, like, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? What's the reason for data? And everyone's like, oh, informed decision making, generate profit, improve customer relations, optimization. I'm like, no. That's cool. Like, that really sounds great. You're in the business of building trust. That's your business. As soon as you build trust, you can do anything.
Yeah, it's a reasonable perspective on things, I guess. Yeah, and it goes. I asked you about your relationship with data and how you think about it. One of the things that I am is naturally mistrustful.
Yes.
I'm a big triangulator because I'm like, unless I've got 3 data points.
It smells weird. Yeah.
Yeah, unless I've got 3 data points. It's not even if it smells weird. I don't even believe the first number I get until at least
it's happened.
Something else has correlated it somewhere else. It's just like I'm naturally skeptical of things. And yeah, to your point, one of the skepticisms I have about a lot of these analytic tools is, I know it's garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't want to be making multi-billion-dollar decisions off the basis, or even for that matter, $1,000 decisions off the basis of something that could just have crummy data fed into it.
Yeah, why not trust your gut, right?
Yeah, right.
You're equally right.
You invariably revert to that, don't you?
Yeah. So that trust was what I was trying to build. Yeah. So coming in, they had a dashboard, and they had some pipelines, and they were pulling data from a manual intervention kind of piece. I was like, no, we need to, they're not trusting it because it's going down often. And we don't know when it's going down. And when it goes down, I was like, what else could go wrong, right? This goes into it. This is going up to our CEO and our executive team. And every day they get a email with summaries and things like that. And it wasn't really meaningful for them. So I'm like, well, let's change that trust. And the number one thing is reliability. It has to happen all the time. Mm-hmm. And if it happens over and over and over, and I see the same thing, I'm going to start trusting it. And then I'm going to move on, and then I'm going to move on. So that's what we did. So for us, the big thing was, are we out of COVID? Are we back to 2019? That's all we wanted to know, backwards looking. And there's a few different questions. And so
I was going to say, how do you parameterize the answer to that question? Because obviously we were out of COVID.
Yeah, but we didn't recover. So we had used the word recovery. Like, are we back to kind of normal? We're seeing how people are moving around.
Yeah.
So then we can start, okay, now we can plan for the future. We can start doing we still have a strategic plan that we're trying to deliver on, right? Mm-hmm. We still have all capital investments that we want to do to improve our experience for our passengers. But are we there yet? When are we going to be there yet? So that's what I built, and we automated everything. And it started with one data set. It was just one.
When we're talking data sets, give us a sense of the dimension of that data set.
Yeah, so in Canada, security goes through CATSA, and that would be our TSA in the United States. Mm-hmm. And it's a XML feed, and it comes in at any second. You can pull stuff in at any time you want. So it's ongoing, constantly. There's two endpoints. We care about the transactions, your scan, like when you're going through security, and then we care about how long the wait is, like how long is the processing time. We care more about the transactions, but those are our two endpoints. So we're not huge, we're not massive. So when you think of big data, it's volume and speed and all those things, veracity. But it was structured. We're talking millions of points, millions of data pieces coming in, and it's happening constantly. But we don't know how many are happening at one time. Are we getting 5? Are we getting 6? Are we getting 100? Right? Like, think of your lineup anytime you've traveled. That's the volume, and it's kind of unknown. So we need to be able to handle that, and it had to happen constantly. And that is used for revenue. That helps us understand how many people go through. And a lot of the ways that an airport generates revenue is landing fees and takeoff and how many people, right? So it's extremely important. So we built that, and then the first piece was like, let's just replicate the look of that dashboard first, but let's brand it. So people were used to it. Let's not change too much. Change management is really, really hard, especially when you don't trust it. So now it's different, and I don't trust it. Like, what else do I dislike? So it's like, let's make it the same, and let's make 2 tweaks. One is like, let's make it use our branding color and not the stock colors that came out of the other application. So right away there's trust. Oh, that looks like something that's from the Halifax. Amazing.
How interesting is a psychological hack? It's a great one.
Yeah. And then the other one is what we heard really quickly is they were doing backwards thinking, which was fine. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like looking back historically, last week versus the week before, yesterday versus today,
that would
like
be
last
me.
month, right? Like, like how are we doing? Like, what's that look like? So dates are a big thing, right? But they were doing it in a way that doesn't make sense in the travel behavior thought pattern. And what I mean by that is the 15th of this month versus the 15th of last month. The 15th of this month this year versus the 15th of the same month the year before. It doesn't mean that could be Wednesday versus Friday. People travel differently on the days of the week. So they're like, it'd be really great to see what a Wednesday looks like compared to another Wednesday. Because we were able to bring it inside, we could pivot and we were like, we can change that. We don't have to ask somebody to change that. And the data's there and it allowed us to do it. And they're like, what? It's like, yeah, it was an hour. Here you go. It's a change. So now we're starting to bring people along for the journey. And they're like, what else can you do? So that trust starts moving up because they're seeing things how it benefits them. Rather than, this is the only meal, I'm going to choke it down. It's like, oh no, I can have a custom meal. I can have something that really helps my business.
And that agility, if I could use that word.
It's absolutely right.
Yeah, okay. Is the transactional cost of asking a different question.
Yeah.
Becomes almost an innovation or creativity enabler, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And what we saw is like, we're going to bring you in. Like, we're going to change this all together. We're going to go product versus project. You're going to see this, and we're going to wrap a prototype, and things are going to fall apart. But like, that's always going to be trustworthy. So hey, so this is going to change on Monday. We'd like to hear your feedback. We're going to leave it up. It takes about a week or two for someone to get used to it. And they went along with it, and they're like, wow, this is different. This is totally new. And we got feedback, and people used it. And then the other thing we changed is you're not going to get an email anymore. I'm not going to send you an email. We're going to put it in a Teams message. It's on your phone. You can kind of get it, and it's curated. And instead of having this long attachment PDF with like some words and some pictures that people need to interpret, it's like, get to the point. So I remember when I was working at the City of Toronto, Open Data was a program that was within my what we call portfolio. Within my portfolio, it's under IT, and Rob was our CIO at the time. And he's a very charismatic, awesome person. And he's like, "We're going into this council meeting with the mayor. You got 20 seconds. Tell me how the program's doing." 20 seconds to tell how a program of Canada's largest city is doing. So it stuck with me. I told him whatever. I told him I don't know what it was. But it stuck with me. It's like when you're an executive or when you're in like that type of position, I need the soundbite and I need it really consumable now so I can go in and do something. So I got 30 seconds of your time. So why I said a Teams message is it's 3 lines. And it's the same message every single day, but the numbers change dynamically and it's automatically going. Every day at 10:30, you get the same message that has the things that are relevant to today, and then a link that you can go into that dashboard. You don't have to interpret it anymore. Why am I asking you to interpret something when it's like, I just want to know, are we up or are we down?
So, question for you related then to the underpinning technologies, because again, my assumption when you talk about implementing a lot of these capabilities, not being, in the technical delivery side of it, is there's a lot of heavy lifting involved, or the possibility or people are spinning up cloud instances and it's just the Wild West and completely chaotic because you're not sure where the data is or who's doing what with it because everyone's got their own instance of something somewhere. And all the platforms themselves are just complicated and require a whole new staff member and we've added a platform, we need an FTE to manage that platform. That's now. Right. So talk me through, if the question makes sense, talk me through the practicalities of that. From
getting there. How did we get there? Yeah, so that's a great piece. So we went up with Cloudera, and like at first I was looking at a couple different things. Do you build? Do you buy? Do you go hyperscaler? Do you not? And open source is just something that I believe in, so it's something that I wanted. And I want something that I could develop in, and I could control my own data, but we need to be able to be on-prem and on cloud. It was just something that we had to do. And there was a few reasons that drove into it, and one of them I'll dig into, like what you were talking about. Our IT team, I love them, they're amazing, but Linux isn't their operating system, and the data platforms generally run on Linux. So it's challenging for them. It's like, is it fair for us to force them to learn an operating system, to put it on-prem, that kind of a piece? So we went with cloud so that we could kind of grow and scale the way that we wanted to do it. So we didn't get that person. It's not like, hey, I need a cloud dev person. It's like, too bad, right? So we worked with Cloudera, and they were able to spin up our platform in 2 weeks and have everything running. And for us, our size, we're not talking zettabytes of data. We're talking in the gigs, but it's happening often. We were able to use the smallest platform size. Like we're using a bunch of different VMs and different pieces, but it's like extra small. And because we could choose our public cloud, we went with Azure because it ties into IT's ability to do single sign-on, authentication. I was like, hey, we're not going to do you dirty, so to speak, right? Like we're going to do something that works with you. So then we're building that better relationship with them. They're like, okay, you're coming to bat for us, we'll go to bat with you. Build that relationship. And it was one of the first cloud pieces that we've ever done at the airport. We were doing some other stuff, but from like a building perspective, it's brand new. So here's this new guy coming in, ripping down some old platforms, making people go into a place that they didn't use, changing the colors, like all these different pieces, right? But it's like, you have a vision, you've seen it work before. It's like, we can get there and we can do it right if we just focus on a couple small things really quickly. And that's what we did. It was like, hey, we're trying to solve one problem. That's all we're trying to do, try to solve one problem. Can we get the data in automatically every single time? Check. All right, next problem. Can we store it and turn it into something to answer a question? Yep. Can we build something that presents something for people to see? Yes. And then now we just move on and we start going, and we go from 1 to like 50 different data sets, and we move from like one table to 100, and we go from past leaning into future predictive. Like it allows you to go if you just focus and you don't think of it as a big problem. Like, how do you eat an elephant? Bite at a time.
Bite at a time, right? Yeah. So I'm fascinated. It kind of brings us up to the present state. Is that right?
Yeah, thereabouts for the, a couple little skips along the way.
Yeah. Well, war stories, that can be over a coffee somewhere. But as you think then about the future and what you might do now that you've started to establish, I'm going to use the word started, not derisively, just...
No. We're early journey.
Yeah. Where can you see this going? Talk to us about executive buy-in. Where are they thinking that they want to see this go? Yeah,
so executive buy-in, they were already there. So kudos to them. Like they were like, for real, this isn't like, they were like, we need to do data. We're all in. You don't have to like sell us on why we need to do it. So that was great. And they gave us the opportunity to like build it right. We've seen what happens when you don't. And then it was like, cool, then we're going to go do some stuff in the shadows. That's what I like to call it. We're not going to tell what we're doing. We're going to do some stuff in the shadows, and then we can deliver. Because too many fingers in a pie causes a bit of concern.
Well, as I like to say, a camel is a horse designed by a committee.
Yeah, like it looks great. Huh? So we started to develop some stuff, and early on, our CFO invited us to go to talk to all his fellow colleagues in other airports that were in Halifax for an annual general meeting to say, like, look, you can do this. So our CFO was like, whoa, I can see all the traction. So we're getting that buy-in. And then we don't get phone calls anymore. We used to get, like, it's down, what's the numbers? Like, so they totally appreciate us, and they ask us to come in and talk. So we get a seat at the table. We do all the updates. We bring those pieces. And our CEO, she's one of our biggest champions. She's like, I want it to be a data-driven approach. I don't want your opinions. So she's always pushing for us to do more and things like that. So we have that buy-in. So what's next? Well, we have a strategic plan like most organizations. So we want to fill on that. And a big part of it is passenger experience here in the airport. Like we need to do that. So we're going to build in there. And we want to make sure that we wring out our capital, our footprint as far as possible before we need to grow, because building is really expensive, right? Like kind of construction. So those are our two areas. But the underpinning part for me is to change that culture. I talked like, I want to change the culture. Get people to think of not what has happened, but what could happen. And if it did happen, is it significant? Just because it seems like a big number to you, it doesn't mean it's actually significant, right? Like, take that gut feeling and don't throw it away, but like just pause for a second and be like, oh, I see that. Or why did it happen? We would get often, I can remember having Joyce as our CEO, we would have a conversation with her, and she's like, why is that number down? It's like, do you remember that day? She's like, no. I'm like, that was the hurricane. You can see that relationship.
Yeah.
And people start getting that understanding, like, oh, external forces are pushing that. So is it significant? Not all the time, but in a single event. And like bringing in these other ways of thinking so people can plan for erroneous events.
So let's touch on that then, because that's a really interesting thought. So based on what you've just said, I've got this presumption that you're taking a lot of this passenger transit data and you're doing your analysis based on that. You're suggesting that for example, if you were to do a join, if you pardon the SQL term, do a join with, all right, well, let's look at NOAA data or weather data. Let's do a join with, I can't think of whatever else it might be. You know what, actually, traffic on the roads.
I'll give you 4.
There you go. All right. You're thinking about this already clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we have done it. So instead of looking in the past, we've built a predictive model. And it comes from people trusting in us and like, hey, you did something right. What about this? Right? So our good friend across the hall, Victor, he's in airport planning, so engineering, like building that kind of stuff out. He's like, can you help us understand when someone might show up? We're like, oh, we don't have any sensors, but maybe. Yeah, let's think about what's that mean for you, right? And he's like, do you kind of know in the future what our biggest day is going to be or our biggest hour? It's like, yeah, let's take a look at that. So yeah, that CATSA data, we look at that, but then we also have the schedule. Like, when does a flight come? How many are we expecting? What size planes are they? Right? Like, how many seats do they have? And you can't just say this type of plane has this many seats. It depends on the carrier. They might take them out to give those nice, comfy kind of seats, right? It's all set up differently. So we bring that in and fuse, right? We connect those together. Well, we also pull in real-time weather bulletins. And then we partnered with, Halifax Discovery. That's part of the group that brings in events into Halifax. So they partnered with us through the Chamber of Commerce, so shout out to them, to give us data of when people are coming 10 years in the future, and we know how many. So you might be like, okay, well, why are you telling me all these different pieces? So yeah, you could build a model and look at the histories like, hey, every Wednesday it seems to be this big and there's this many planes. But what about when the snowstorm hits? What did that look like? What is the impact over a long weekend? What is the impact if you throw the Junos in that came in? Junos is like the Grammys for Canada for music. When we had an extra 5,000 people come in one day, like that totally changes how we operate. So when you bring all that together, and we leveraged a model put out by Meta, it's Profit, and we fit it in, and it predicted it out. And it predicted it pretty decently. And then we're like, oh yeah, we forgot to say COVID happened. So it saw these huge dips, and you're like, hey, maybe it happens all the time like that. We're like, no, what if we We say do that, and then add in these events. And now it's predicting it in that way of like super accurately, to the point of the single largest day is what a lot of people look at. We were off by like 7 people.
Wow.
So we take that and like, what else can we do with it? Like, why don't we predict when people will show up? Do we need, like, so is it going to be busy at security? How long will it take them to run through? Because we know how many people they can process. Oh, wow, it's queuing up. That queue's going to last for 4 hours, 2 hours, 30 minutes. Don't put anyone there. It's going to be gone in 15 minutes, right? So rather than be reactive and use your gut, like, oh, there's going to be an extra 200 people. That's not significant because it's over in 5 minutes, right? So it allows people to like really plan and be less reactive.
That's an extraordinary set of outcomes and an exciting opportunity for future growth and innovation. I'm excited by it. I guess the question is, where to next? What have you got in mind? What's the next big innovation? Other than building a national park in Halifax Airport, I'm sure you're going to try and get that through.
Totally, yeah.
Explain the benefits
exactly,
of it. You get to wear your hiking boots.
Exactly,
right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The big one for me, I think,
Sorry,
it's okay. I might carry a canoe on my head, walk around and stuff like that.
The CEO walks past, is like, I
Ryan,
told you no.
Doing? Yeah.
I told you no.
How about little one? I think the big one for us and for me is building on passenger experience beyond just saying you're doing something. Mm-hmm. And I've traveled a whole bunch, so I don't get personally what I'm about to say, but so many people, my friends and my family and things like that, travel anxiety. It's a real thing. People get extremely anxious about traveling.
Are you talking about the on-plane experience?
Just getting to the airport, getting through
so you're not
the
talking
airport.
about fear of flying. You're
No,
talking about...
it's like, okay, I'm going to travel. When do I need to be there? What are the rules? Where do I need to go? Where do I go? What, like all these pieces, all the things that are around it. And for many people, they don't travel very often. So it's not second nature to them. Or they're traveling across our province, and it could be a 4 or 5 hour drive. And what's it mean in the winter versus all these different pieces,
of course,
right? So I really love passenger journeys or customer journeys, like that kind of thing, right? Like walking through all these pieces. So my hope, my desire, my dream is to take a data-driven approach and provide something. I'm just going to use the word something. Is it an app? Is it an experience? Whatever it is. Something to the general public that helps them to lower that anxiety as low as possible when their journey starts by opening their door. So to me, someone's journey, obviously booking the flight, but like their travel to the airport starts the moment they open the door. Are you getting in a car?
Possibly even before. I mean, just
absolutely.
You've got me ideating now, because one of the great discussions that we have at home before a flight is it's because sometimes it's like, especially if it's a weekend day and you're traveling for work, you're like, I really want to put this thing off to the last minute because, I want to be at home, right?
Yep.
And even during work week, a lot of the time it's like, you know what? If I don't need to leave and sit around the airport for 4 hours because I put too much time into it.
Yep.
And then the flip side happens is you start running the gauntlet, and I know I do it because I'm literally often the guy as the player. Sorry, I'm just
sprinting.
Looking at... For those of you listening, our producer is nodding his head vigorously off camera. So I think there's probably people on the podcast going, that's me too. The doors are closing and you're the last one onto the plane.
Yep.
Because you've cut it so fine. And sorry that I'm taking over your answer here, but what time does the car need to arrive to pick me up? Or if I'm driving myself, how much time do I need to arrive? I've stopped driving to my local airport, which is probably killing their parking people because they charge a fortune for it.
Yep.
Because I can't afford to drive around in circles, even with all the great digital technology which tells me where the free parking spaces are. I can't afford to drive around for 30 minutes because I will miss my flight.
That's right.
To your point about anxiety, I just realised I have probably suppressed or repressed anxiety, and it changes behaviours. But I'd argue even before I open the door, it might have been the night before going, when should I leave? What's appropriate?
Fair point.
Right? Like, what's traffic like on a Monday? And it'd be great if I'm going to Halifax that it sends me a proactive message going, hey, we noticed you've got a flight coming up fairly soon.
That.
You know what would be a really good idea? Book that ride for now.
Exactly. And the first thought of like taking like that product approach and pieces like getting people comfortable, let's just do it passive. You can go in and you can make those decisions, right? You can look at it and we let you know like, hey, there's a weather event, take that into consideration. It's a long weekend. We see more people around there. This is the main route. There's traffic. This is what it looks like. When you get there or you take an Uber, here's where you're at. You're right below what this is how busy Air Canada is, here's how busy United is, all those pieces, and then security, like all those ways through. So it's the idea is just to give them that part. What parking is full, so don't even bother going to the parkade, it's full, go over to this one, or no, the third floor.
Yep.
Like the third floor is really great. Oh, you have an electric vehicle. Did you know you could charge? Go to these places, like that kind of stuff. Give them those information. What they do is up to them, right? But now you're informed. So maybe the anxiety comes down a notch. The idea is to go from that, learn from it, get some feedback, like what people really care about, and then turn into what you were talking about. It's an active piece. You can sign up. I don't need to know your name. PI, like, we don't want to know that. Like, it's not that piece. But maybe I live in this neighborhood. Great, I can give you better directions, or, partnering with the province and the cities. Like, there's major construction. Why do you need to go to 5 places? Why do you need to go to 5 places? Okay, Google Maps to do this. I got to go to the website to do that. And then I go to my booking. And not all carriers act the same way. Some are fully automated. Some, no, you still need to talk to a person to drop your bag off. So we kind of interview the people and like, what's your journey going to look like? Hey, like you have kids, like did you know that there's this place for them to play upstairs, or you might want to have breakfast beforehand, like all the types of things depending on how you want to travel. And then, notifications and it's sent to them. So that would be the direct to consumer, the direct to passenger kind of experience. But indirectly, it benefits as well. Who's to say the taxi company doesn't log in and say, oh, this is when the flights are coming. I want to follow the afternoon. We're going to send 3 times more cabs at this time. So they're more optimized and they have more people there. And like it just works for them. So indirectly, we're benefiting our passengers. So the thought pattern is to leverage it that way so that anxiety comes down and they can just have a better experience.
I think it's great. And I think for me, the predictive element is where the real magic might happen in that scenario, because again, to your point, there was a concert in town last time and it was awful and there were delays and everything else. You've got that data, and then you have, to your point, some future data about an event that you've positively correlated to a bad outcome, that you're able to say, hey, we've noticed there's this event coming up and therefore it is likely that it's going to have a ripple effect.
Exactly.
And that's great. The question that is going through my mind as I'm listening to this, because we are talking about this join of external data sets. Ray Wang was on the podcast recently and he talked about the idea of the internet dark ages, or dark data, that people are going to stop publishing data because they're going to realise that it has monetary value. Did you hear what Ray was talking about?
I totally did,
Did that resonate with you at all? Does that raise any flags for you going, well, actually, you know what, we're thinking about not letting people see our data, so maybe they're going to stop, we won't be able to see theirs, and that's going to ruin a lot of these concepts. What are your thoughts? I mean, you mentioned open data before and open GIS.
That's where it's going to go,
Talk to me about your thoughts around open data versus closed data.
Yeah, and I think what Ray said, it resonates in certain areas. But what do we mean by data? And I think a lot of that comes down to, is it content, when we're talking data to scrape for generative, like scraping books, scraping articles, movies, videos, audio clips, that? Yeah, of course, right? Like I think people are going to get a little bit more protective around that for likeness and all those names and stuff. But when you talk about authoritative style data coming from cities, provinces, governments, that's always going to be there. It's mandated. So that's going to stay available. And it's just going to improve when people demand more of it. So I think we're going to see a mix of it, but we'll probably see more partnerships. And what we want to do is every time we pull something, we want to give you back. What can you have from us to make your business better? Or, hey, can we automate for you because it makes it better for us rather than you sending us some things? So I think we'll start to see different partnerships between organizations to share differently. And that's going to open it up.
Yeah, that's the key word there too, I think. The operative word is because, of course, you gave the example of, say, a transportation taxi company. It's like, well, look, we'll give you some of our information that you can munge in to do predictive. If you send us some stuff in return, or maybe you don't even need to send us data, the very fact that we know when to allocate more resources, that's the only data we need. Hey, you can make more money at this point in time.
Absolutely.
That's music to our ears. Let's just take that. I think that's a pragmatic view of how we might progress, and somewhat comforting, because when I heard internet dark ages, I'm like, that sounds dystopian in a way that I really didn't want to comprehend. Look, we're going to wrap up now. It's been an absolute blast having you on the show. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Good luck with your journey. Good luck with trying to persuade the boss, the CEO, to implement a national park at Halifax International Airport. I'm sure
it's going to go over well.
No one will be more surprised than is it Jan, did you say?
Joyce.
Joyce, so my apologies. So Joyce, if you're listening, just a couple of trees. I think you'd be happy with a couple of trees in a small lake.
That's right.
Yeah, great. And a couple of bears. Is that a...
Oh, I'd love a couple of black bears.
No, but in all seriousness, thank you. Good luck with your data journey.
Well, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AI Forecast. If you like what you've heard, hit that subscribe button, or better still, share it with someone you think might also enjoy it. If you've got any questions for our guest or feedback for future episodes, feel free to reach out to Cloudera on social media using @Cloudera on LinkedIn. We'll see you all next week. Bye for now.